SeaTac Airport at 6:12 p.m. looked like it was made of rain. Water hammered the glass walls and runway lights smeared into trembling streaks. Inside concourse, a people stood shoulder to shoulder in that tense misery that comes with a weather delay. Seats were full. Chargers were taken. Every few seconds, someone checked the gate screen as if staring harder might change it. Lena Carter kept to the edge of the crowd by gate A9 back near the window, travel bag hooked on her shoulder. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her hair was in a quick knot, and her hospital badge still swung at her chest. She looked half asleep, but her eyes moved quiet and steady, tracking the corridor and the security post down the hall. A sharp voice cut through the gate noise. "Hey, nurse." Dylan Mercer stepped in front of her like he owned the space. Navy suit-polished shoes, watch catching the overhead light every time he flicked his hand. His roller bag sat angled across the boarding line, blocking it on purpose. "This lane is priority," he said loud enough to recruit an audience. "You're in the wrong place." Lena shifted one step to the side, giving him room. No argument, just space. Dylan smiled all teeth. He leaned closer. Too tired to talk figures. He bumped his suitcase forward. Hard plastic thudded into Lena's ribs. A ripple ran through the line. A couple of heads turned, then turned away. Someone's phone lifted, then hesitated. Lena straightened. Her voice came out calm, almost clinical. "Step back," Dylan laughed. "Or what?" He grabbed the lanyard at her chest and yanked, pulling her into the glass. The badge snapped against her throat. For a moment, the concourse went quiet. Somewhere a child stopped crying. Lena's left hand rose precise. Fingers wrapped his wrist. Her right palm met the suitcase handle and redirected it away from her body. She stepped in, hips turning, and Dylan's balance vanished. His knees hit first, then his shoulder. The suit crumpled. His face pressed to the floor, eyes wide, breathing loud and ragged. Lena dropped to one knee beside him, arm locked behind his back, pressure measured. "Don't move," she said. "If you're enjoying this story, hit like and subscribe. Before I continue, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments." Lena kept her weight centered, one knee on the tile. One foot planted her grip firm without looking dramatic. Dylan's wrist was pinned at an angle that made every twitch a bad idea. He tried anyway, a quick jerk powered by pride more than muscle, and his breath hitched as the joint answered for him. "Stop," Lena said, still quiet. Not a threat, a direction. The line had turned into a frozen mural. A man with a backpack held his phone chest high, recording with both hands like he was afraid of dropping it. A woman in a beige trench coat stared at Lena's fingers as if she was watching a magic trick. Near the podium, the gate agent stood with her mouth open, radio halfway lifted, eyes bouncing between Lena and Dylan like she could not decide which one was the danger. Dylan's cheek pressed to the floor, his voice squeezed out sideways. "You're crazy. You just attacked me." Lena did not argue. She did not look around for approval. She only adjusted her grip by a fraction the way a nurse adjusts a blood pressure cuff, precise and practiced. The badge at her throat had twisted from the yank, the plastic edge reddening the skin under her jaw. "Ma'am," someone said from behind the boarding stanchions, careful, tentative. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Lena answered without turning her head. Her eyes stayed on Dylan's shoulder line and hands. She watched what mattered. Footsteps came fast from the corridor. Two airport security officers, dark uniforms, radios crackling, moved in with the kind of speed that meant they had seen this before. People peeled back without being told, a wave of bodies making a path. The female officer reached them first and stopped short, palms open. "Okay, everyone stay where you are," she said. Her gaze took in Dylan on the floor, Lena kneeling beside him, the twisted lanyard, the suitcase turned sideways near Lena's shin. "Ma'am, I need you to release him." Lena breathed in through her nose. She shifted her knee off Dylan's back and eased his wrist down in a controlled arc until his forearm lay flat. She let go as if she was setting down a glass. "I will," she said, and then she did. Both hands came up in front of her chest. Fingers spread, her posture calm. He grabbed my badge and shoved his suitcase into me. Twice. Dylan rolled to one hip and pushed himself up on an elbow. face flushed hair, must fury replacing shock. She tackled me. Out of nowhere. She's violent. You saw it. Tell them you saw it. He threw the words at the crowd like darts looking for someone to stick. No one met his eyes. The male officer crouched near Dylan, keeping space. Sir, stay seated. I'm not sitting. I have a flight. I have meetings. Dylan's voice climbed, trying to rebuild the world where he was in charge. He pointed at Lena as if she was an object on a slide. Arrest her. She attacked me. The gate agent finally found her voice. He was yelling at her. She said too fast, too thin. He shoved his bag into her. I heard it. I saw it. A murmur rose from the line, small at first, then layered with more voices. He pushed her. He yanked her badge. I have video. The female officer looked toward Lena. What's your name? Lena Carter, Lena said. She kept her hands visible just like she had been trained to do in any situation where uniforms and adrenaline showed up. I'm traveling home. I asked him to step back. The officer nodded once, filing it away. Any injuries? My ribs are sore. My neck got scraped, Lena said. She touched the red mark under her jaw with the lightest brush, then dropped her hand. I'm okay. Dylan made a sound that was half laugh, half snarl. Listen to her. Talking like she's filing a chart. This is ridiculous. The male officer asked, Sir, what is your name? Dylan sat up straighter, smoothing his suit jacket with a hard swipe like he could iron dignity back into it. Dylan Mercer. I'm a senior executive, and I want her charged. The officer's expression did not change. Mr. Mercer, you will remain here while we sort out what happened. Lena heard the word remain and almost smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. In the ICU, the sickest patients fought the simple truth that their bodies were not in charge anymore. They tried to sit up to rip off monitors to pull out lines. Nurses learned early how to speak with calm authority, the tone that did not rise to meet chaos. The same tone Lena had used on Dylan without thinking. A minute ago, she had been another tired traveler, barely held together by caffeine and stubbornness. Now she could feel the entire concourse looking at her scrubs as if they had turned into a costume that did not match the scene. The rain outside thickened, drumming harder on the glass. The gate screen still flashed delayed in bright letters that felt almost rude. Lena's mind flicked backward not by choice, but the way the body sometimes does when it needs to make sense of itself. At 5:30 that morning, she had been in a windowless ICU room under fluorescent lights, leaning over a patient who could not breathe on his own. The ventilator alarms had sounded sharp and urgent, and the resident at the foot of the bed had looked at Lena with panic hiding behind a professional face. Pressure's dropping, the resident had said. Lena had been the steady point in the room. She had checked the line, found the kink, fixed it, and watched the numbers climb back to safety. Later, she had stood in a hallway with a family member who was shaking with fear and anger, demanding answers no one could give. You people don't care, the man had shouted at her, tears on his face. He had been big, loud, flailing in grief. Lena had not shouted back. She had let him spend his fury on the air, and then she had spoken softly with facts and compassion, and he had finally sagged, exhausted by his own pain. That was the job. Holding the worst parts of people and not letting them break you. After her shift, she had washed her hands until they stung, changed her shoes, and checked her phone in the locker room. A single message sat at the top of her screen from Boise. Dad is awake. He asked if you made it out on time. He misses you. Lena had stared at that text longer than she meant to. Her father never asked for much. Even after the surgery, even with his voice weak on the phone, he tried to sound like the old version of himself. She had promised she would be there tonight. She had said it like a fact, the way she said a patient would be okay, even when she was still fighting to make it true. At the airport, she had moved through security on autopilot, the scent of antiseptic still clinging to her hands. She bought a bottle of water she barely drank. She found gate A9 and chose the spot by the window because it gave her room and a clear view. The delay announcement had come like a sigh through the concourse. Groans, complaints, a few angry laughs. Nothing unusual, Then Dylan Mercer's voice had started slicing through the air, sharp enough to make heads turn. Lena had noticed it the way you notice smoke before you see flames. His volume, his pacing, the way he invaded the space of the gate agent, the way people shifted away from him without meaning to. A storm in a suit. Lena had kept her eyes down, not because she was afraid, but because she did not need to invite anything into her orbit. She was too tired for drama, too tired for anyone's ego. And still he had drifted toward her like anger, looking for a soft place to land. Now standing a few feet from Dylan with security between them, Lena felt the weight of all the small choices that had stacked into this moment. The step aside, the calm warning, the restraint, the exact amount of force, the exact amount of control. She could still feel her pulse in her fingertips. The female officer turned to the crowd. If you recorded anything, we need your name and contact information. Please form a line over there by the podium. A man in a mariner's cap raised his phone. I got the whole thing. He was right in her face. A woman with a rolling tote nodded fast. He shoved the suitcase into her. More than once. Dylan's gaze darted searching for allies and found none. He looked back at Lena as if her silence was the final insult. This is insane, he snapped. I was defending myself. She's trained or something. Nobody does that. Lena's eyes met his for the first time since she had released him. Not long, not dramatic. Just long enough for him to realize she was not shaken. The male officer spoke into his radio, low and clipped. Another set of footsteps echoed from the corridor, heavier than the first pair, and the gate agent stepped aside as a new uniform entered the space. Dylan straightened again, gathering himself, preparing his voice for an audience that was no longer impressed. Lena stayed where she was, hands still open at her sides, breathing even, watching the edges of the crowd and the shape of the hallway the way she always did when a room got unpredictable. The new uniform moved with a different kind of authority. Not hurried, like airport security, not wide-eyed like a gate agent trying to keep a line from boiling over. This man walked in like the building belonged to him. His shirt was dark blue. His badge caught the overhead light, and his duty belt looked heavy enough to change the way a person stood. He stopped just outside the circle of phones and stanchions, eyes sweeping once over the scene. Everyone take 2 steps back, he said. His voice was calm, and somehow that made people listen faster. The crowd shifted. A few feet of breathing room opened around Lena and Dylan. The officer's gaze settled on Dylan, first taking in the suit, the expensive shoes scuffed at the toes, the red face, the jaw set tight like he was trying to bite down on humiliation. Then his eyes moved to Lena, the scrubs, the badge, the faint mark under her jaw, her hands still relaxed at her sides. I'm Officer Grant Holloway with Airport Police, he said. Who called it in? The female security officer raised her hand. Gate A9, passenger altercation. We have multiple videos. Holloway nodded once. He pointed to his left. Sir, you come with me. Over there. Dylan blinked like he had not expected to be directed anywhere. Then his mouth tightened and he stood brushing lint off his sleeve as if this was a boardroom, not a concourse. I'm the victim here, Dylan said loud enough to hook attention again. She attacked me. Holloway did not react. He just looked at Dylan until Dylan's voice thinned out. Over there. Holloway repeated, and Dylan followed, still talking as if he could argue his way into being right. Holloway turned to Lena. Ma'am, you stay here. Security will stand with you. Lena nodded. Her throat stung where the lanyard had snapped against her skin. Her ribs pulsed with a dull ache that matched the rhythm of the rain outside. She could feel adrenaline trying to drain out of her, leaving a hollow fatigue behind it. The male security officer stepped closer, not crowding her, just present. You did good keeping your hands visible, he said under his breath, like he did not want the crowd to hear him humanize her. Lena gave a small nod. Her eyes slid to the gate screen, still delayed, still indifferent. A few people began to drift toward the podium, as instructed, phones in hand, faces bright with the strange energy that comes from witnessing something real. They looked at Lena with curiosity, now not pity. Some looked at her like they wanted her to say something inspiring. She stayed quiet. Across the small gap, Dylan's voice rose again. This is unbelievable, Dylan said. I was standing in line and she just snapped. You can check. You have cameras everywhere. I want her arrested. I want charges. I want her badge number. I want her full name. Holloway held up a hand, palm out. You will answer my questions. Then we will hear from her. Then we will review video. Dylan scoffed. My lawyer will love that. Holloway tilted his head slightly. You have a lawyer on call. Dylan took out his phone. His fingers moved fast, practiced a man used to calling people and making things happen. I have people, he said like the word itself was a credential. He put the phone to his ear, and as it rang, his eyes slid toward Lena. Not hate, exactly. Something more calculating, as if he was already rewriting the story to fit him. Lena felt that look like a hand pressing against her sternum. She had seen it before, not often in airports, but in hospital hallways when someone wanted a villain for their fear. The look that said, if I can make you the problem, I can stay the hero. Her own phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Holloway spoke again, steady. Put the phone away. Dylan covered the speaker. I'm calling counsel. That is my right. Holloway did not flinch. You can call whoever you want after I get basic information. Put it away. Dylan stared at him, testing. Holloway stared back, unblinking. Dylan's thumb moved. The call ended. What is your full name? Holloway asked. Dylan Mercer, Dylan said. Senior Vice President of Sales at Skybridge Analytics. You can look me up. I fly constantly. I have status with this airline. I spend more on travel than most people make in a year. Holloway wrote it down as if Dylan had just given him the name of a tree. And her name, Holloway asked. Dylan pointed sharp. Lena Carter. She admitted it. Holloway nodded, then looked toward the line of witnesses forming by the podium. We will gather statements. If you recorded video, we need it. If you saw the start, we need you. A man in a gray hoodie stepped forward, holding his phone out like evidence. I started recording when he shoved the suitcase into her, he said. His voice shook a little. Not from fear now, but from the aftertaste of it. He did it twice. Then he grabbed her badge. A woman in business attire followed. He was yelling at the gate agent first, she said. He was already angry before he went after her. Dylan snapped his head toward her. I did not go after anyone. I was trying to get through a line. The woman did not back down. You were berating her. Then you touched her. Dylan's laugh came out bitter. Touched. Are you serious? She put me on the floor. Holloway lifted his gaze from his notepad. You will not speak while witnesses are giving statements. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed. His hands clenched at his sides, knuckles whitening the body of a man who did not know how to be quiet. Lena watched Holloway work, not just hearing the words, but watching the mechanics. Where he stood, how he controlled the radius around him, how he kept Dylan on a short leash without looking like he was wrestling for dominance. It reminded her of the best charge nurses she had ever worked with, the ones who could walk into chaos and instantly make it smaller. Holloway glanced toward Lena. Ma'am, I'll take your statement now. Lena stepped forward just enough to be heard without stepping into Dylan's orbit. Holloway kept his body between them. Tell me what happened, Holloway said. Lena took a slow breath. Her voice stayed level. I was standing in line. He stepped in front of me. He made comments about my scrubs and called me a nurse. I did not respond. He shoved his suitcase into my ribs. I told him to step back. He grabbed my lanyard and pulled me into the glass. I restrained him until security arrived. I released him as soon as I was told to. Holloway nodded. Did you strike him? No. Did you threaten him? No. Did you try to leave? I moved aside. I gave him space. Holloway looked at the red mark under her jaw. Any injuries besides that? My ribs hurt. My neck is scraped. Holloway turned slightly, addressing a security officer. Get medical to check her and also check him. Standard. Dylan exploded at the word medical like it was another insult. I don't need medical. I need her in cuffs. You are treating me like I'm the problem. Holloway did not look at him. You are being investigated. Dylan's breathing got louder. He ran a hand through his hair and paced a half step, then caught himself when Holloway's eyes flicked up. He forced stillness, but the anger kept leaking out in the way he held his shoulders. Lena's phone buzzed again. This time, she felt it like a pulse. She reached into her pocket slowly, keeping her movements visible, and pulled it out. A message sat on the screen from her sister. "Any update?" Dad keeps asking. Lena swallowed. The screen blurred for a moment, and she blinked it clear. She typed with her thumb. Delayed. "I am okay. I will call soon." She locked the phone and slipped it back into her pocket, her fingers lingering there, as if she could hold on to Boise through fabric. Holloway looked at her again. "You traveling alone?" "Yes." "Where are you headed?" "Boise." Holloway nodded as if that mattered, because it did. People with somewhere to go often took risks without thinking. People with someone waiting for them often tried to keep trouble small. Lena had tried. It had not worked. Medical arrived in a quick jog, two people in navy scrubs pushing a small bag on wheels. One of them looked at Lena's badge and recognized the hospital logo immediately. Her face shifted in that tiny way nurses shift when they spot another nurse in a bad situation. "Hey," the medic said softly, stepping close enough to speak without an audience. "Can I take a look at your neck?" Lena angled her chin up. The medic's gloved fingers were gentle. "Redness," she murmured. "No swelling." "Any trouble swallowing?" "No." The medic moved to Lena's ribs. "Any sharp pain when you breathe?" "Just sore." The medic nodded and looked at Holloway. "She seems okay. Bruising later likely." The second medic went toward Dylan. Dylan flinched away, like the offer of help was an accusation. "I said I'm fine." "Sir, it's protocol," the medic replied. Voice flat, used to stubborn men. Dylan held his hands up as if warding them off. "I'm not letting anyone touch me until my attorney is present." The medic blinked once, then stepped back, letting Holloway handle it. Holloway turned to a security officer holding a tablet. "Show me the footage you have." The security officer tapped the screen. Video played without sound, the concourse in wide angle. Lena saw herself standing near the stanchions, still small, almost swallowed by the crowd. She saw Dylan approach with the suitcase angled like a wedge. Even from a distance, his posture looked aggressive. Shoulders forward, chin lifted. Holloway watched without moving his eyes, tracking details most people would miss. The suitcase bump. Lena's step to the side. The second shove. The grab at the lanyard. Lena's hands moving with clean economy. Dylan dropping. When the video ended, Holloway did not speak for a moment. He rewound it and watched again. Dylan leaned forward, trying to interrupt. He edited it. "That's not the full thing?" "She provoked me." She was smirking. Holloway paused the video and finally looked at Dylan. His expression was not angry. It was simply blank in a way that made Dylan's words feel smaller. "We will review all angles," Holloway said. "How many angles could you possibly need?" Dylan snapped. Holloway nodded toward the ceiling, where small dark domes hid in plain sight. "Enough." Dylan's eyes flicked up, then back down. For the first time, uncertainty slid into his face. It did not soften him. It just made him sharper. Lena heard someone behind her whisper, "That guy is awful." And another voice answer. He was like that at the desk earlier. The words landed and drifted away. Lena did not turn. She focused on keeping her breathing steady, on not letting the tremor in her hands show. Her body wanted to shake now that it was safe. She would not let it. Holloway stepped closer to Lena, lowering his voice. "You have any history with him?" "No." "You sure?" "I have never seen him before today." Holloway nodded, and his gaze shifted to Dylan again, measuring him with a quiet calculation. Dylan noticed. He straightened his spine and tried to reassemble the version of himself that people usually obeyed. He smoothed his tie that he was not wearing, then caught himself and dropped his hand. His eyes scanned the crowd, searching for sympathy. A young woman in line met his gaze for half a second, then looked away with disgust. Dylan's cheeks flushed darker. "This is harassment," he said to Holloway. "I'm being targeted." Holloway's voice stayed even. "You are being recorded." Dylan's laugh came out too loud. "Good. Record it. Record all of it. You will see she is the aggressor." Lena stared at the tile near her shoes, listening to the rain, the distant announcements, the soft click of phones as people sent videos to themselves. Her ribs ached. Her neck stung. Her mind kept circling the same thought, stubborn and simple. Boise, she had promised. Holloway asked the security officer with the tablet. How long do you have before this file overwrites? Not for days, the officer said. We have it saved. Holloway nodded, then turned slightly toward another officer. Run his name and her name. Basic check. No assumptions. Dylan's head snapped up. Excuse me, you're running my name for what? Holloway did not answer right away. He simply waited, letting Dylan hear himself. Then Holloway said, because this happened in a secured area of an airport. Because we have a reported assault. Because that is standard. Dylan's mouth tightened. He pulled out his phone again, not to call this time, but to scroll with furious swipes as if information could defend him. His screen reflected in his eyes, restless. Lena felt the atmosphere shift again, subtle but real. The crowd was not just watching now. They were judging. Dylan could feel it. His posture grew more rigid, like he was holding back a flood. Holloway's radio crackled. He listened, eyes fixed on Dylan, then glanced at Lena, then back at Dylan. He did not speak for a beat, as if choosing the exact tone he needed. Then he said, Mr. Mercer, I need you to sit down. Dylan stared at him. No. Holloway's voice did not rise. Sit down. Dylan's nostrils flared. He looked around, saw the phones, saw the uniforms, saw the line of witnesses waiting to talk. He lowered himself onto a chair near the wall with a stiff, angry motion like sitting was an insult. Lena stayed standing, hands still visible, shoulders relaxed. Outside, the glass rain blurred the world into gray. Inside, the concourse held its breath in a new way. Not fear this time, but attention, focused and sharp. The chair Dylan sat in was one of those hard airport seats bolted to the floor, designed to survive everything except ego. He perched on the edge of it anyway, knees spread, elbows on his thighs, jaw working like he was chewing something bitter. His eyes kept lifting to the phones pointed his way, then sliding off again as if the sight burned. Officer Holloway angled his body between Dylan and the crowd, a quiet barrier. We're going to do this clean, he said. One at a time. No shouting. No interruptions. Dylan let out a short breath that sounded like a scoff. I'm not interrupting. I'm correcting lies. Holloway did not respond. He turned to the security officer with the tablet. Send that clip to evidence storage. Tag it with the time and gate number. The officer nodded and tapped quickly. The screen glowed against his palm, reflecting little squares of motion. Lena watched without moving, her arms loose at her sides, her fingers trying not to curl. She could feel the ache settling into her ribs, heavy and slow. She had lived through enough long nights in the ICU to recognize the moment adrenaline gives up and hands the body back its pain. The gate agent, still pale, stepped closer with her radio clutched like a lifeline. Officer Holloway. I'm Maya Ellis. I'm the agent on duty. I can give you my statement. Holloway nodded toward the podium. In a minute. I want to separate everyone first. He looked at Lena. Ma'am, I'm going to move you a few steps away just to get your statement without noise. Lena followed not because she needed protection, but because it reduced variables. They stopped near a wall display with a map of the concourse and advertisements for coffee. A janitor paused with his mop eyes wide, then kept walking. Holloway opened a small notebook. Start from when you first noticed him. Lena took a breath. The air smelled like wet coats and airport pretzels, but underneath it, she caught the faint, sterile scent still clinging to her scrubs. I heard him yelling at the gate desk, she said. I was waiting in line. He stepped into my space. He told me I didn't belong there. I didn't argue. I moved aside. He kept talking. Then he shoved his suitcase into me. Holloway's pen scratched. Where did he hit you? Lena touched her side lightly, then dropped her hand. Here. Ribs. He did it again after I told him to step back. And the lanyard. He grabbed it and pulled me into the glass. The badge snapped against my neck. Lena kept her voice level, but her throat tightened when she said neck. It had been a small thing, a strip of skin scraped red, but it was also the moment the situation changed in her body, from annoying to dangerous. Hands near the throat did that. Always. Holloway's eyes lifted to her mark. You restrained him. Describe exactly what you did. Lena could have described it with the same sterile precision she used in charting, but she chose words that sounded plain. I controlled his wrist, redirected the suitcase, and used his forward motion to take him down. I didn't strike him. I held him until security arrived. Then I released. Holloway paused, pen hovering. You have training? The question landed soft, but Lena felt its weight. She did not flinch. I'm a nurse, she said. I work ICU. I've had to restrain patients for safety. Holloway watched her for a beat, as if weighing the shape of that answer against what he had seen on the tablet. Understood, he said finally, and wrote again. Did you tell him to stop before you restrained him? Yes. I told him to step back. What words did you use? Lena blinked once. Step back. Holloway nodded, satisfied with the clarity. Okay? The noise of the concourse seeped back in around them. A boarding announcement crackled from a speaker above the gate, then cut off mid-sentence. Somewhere nearby, a rolling suitcase clattered over tile. The crowd kept filming anyway. Some phones were lowered now, but a few stayed lifted steady, hungry. Lena felt eyes on her scrubs, on the badge at her throat, on the fact that she looked like someone who should be invisible. She hated that part. She hated being a story in other people's mouths. At the hospital, she could disappear into work. No one cared what she looked like as long as the monitors stayed steady and the patient kept breathing. Here, she could feel herself pinned in place by attention. Across the open space, Dylan raised his voice again, testing the boundaries like he had tested Lena's. Am I under arrest? Because if I'm not, I'm leaving. Holloway turned his head slightly, not even fully facing him. You are not leaving. Dylan's laugh was sharp. You can't do that. Holloway's voice did not change. Watch me. Dylan's cheeks reddened. He looked around for someone to back him up. Someone impressed by his suit or his title, or the practiced certainty in his tone. The faces watching him now were not impressed. They looked tired. They looked disgusted. They looked like people who had been stuck in airports long enough to know the difference between a bad day and a man who enjoyed pushing. A woman with silver hair carrying a leather tote stepped toward the witness line at the podium. I want to make sure you hear this, she said, aiming her words at Holloway, but letting Dylan hear. He was mocking her, calling her names. He put his hands on her. She told him to stop. Then he grabbed her like she was property. Dylan snapped. That's not what happened. Holloway lifted one finger, not dramatic, just final. Dylan's mouth closed, but his chest rose and fell fast. His hands flexed on his knees. Maya, the gate agent, spoke next. She kept her voice steady the way customer service teaches you to, but her eyes were still glossy. I saw the whole thing. He was aggressive from the start. With me first, then with her. She didn't do anything until he got physical. She didn't even raise her voice. Holloway listened, then asked for names, numbers, and video files. People stepped forward one after another. Each person had a slightly different angle, a different detail. The suitcase thud. The lanyard yank. The way Lena's voice stayed calm. Dylan's smirk. Dylan's laugh. Dylan sat rigid through it, the way patients sometimes sat rigid when they were trying not to show fear. Lena had seen it in men who came into the ER after a bar fight, insisting they were fine, while their eyes darted around the room for exits. Dylan had that same restless scanning now, except his exit was not a door. It was a narrative. He wanted the story to bend around him. One of the security officers handed Holloway a small card. Officer, the airline supervisor is on the way. Holloway nodded. Good. Lena's phone buzzed again, softer this time, like it was afraid to disturb the air. She did not reach for it. She kept her gaze on the floor tiles, tracing the grout lines with her eyes. A trick she used when she needed to keep her breathing even. In the ICU, she had learned how quickly emotions could spill into hands, and shaky hands made mistakes. A pair of shoes stopped in front of her. The medic who had checked her earlier stood there again, holding a small pack of sterile gauze and a sealed bottle of water. Drink, she said quietly. Lena took the bottle. The plastic was cold against her palm. She twisted the cap and sipped. Water ran over the raw spot in her throat and grounded her. The medic glanced at the mark under Lena's jaw. "It'll bruise the medic," murmured. "I know," Lena said. The medic hesitated, then spoke even lower. "You work at Harborview." Lena's eyes lifted. The medic's badge said Tess Morgan. Her hands were the hands of someone who started IVs for a living. Quick. Competent. "Yeah," Lena said. Tess gave a small nod, something like solidarity. "Okay," she said. Then stepped away, without asking for more, as if she understood Lena did not want to talk about herself. Officer Holloway's radio crackled. He listened, eyes narrowed slightly, then answered in a clipped tone that kept the words private. Lena could not make out what was said, but she saw the way Holloway's focus sharpened. He glanced once at Dylan, then at the tablet, then back at Dylan again, as if placing him into a file drawer in his mind. A woman in a blazer arrived at a fast walk, carrying a clipboard and wearing the strained smile of someone who had been handed a mess. She reached the edge of the crowd and introduced herself to Holloway. "Kendra Walsh, Airline Operations." Holloway nodded. "We have a reported assault. We are collecting statements and video. Your agent witnessed it." Kendra's eyes flicked to Maya, then to Dylan, then to Lena. "Okay," she said, and the smile vanished. "Mr. Mercer, is that correct?" Dylan stood halfway, then sat again, caught by Holloway's glance. "Yes," Dylan said, forcing smoothness back into his voice. "I'm going to need you to confirm my status and get me on another flight. I've been attacked." Kendra looked at the red mark under Lena's jaw and did not answer him right away. "We'll address travel after law enforcement finishes," she said. Dylan's nostrils flared. "This is unbelievable. I'm a frequent flyer. I'm a VIP customer. I have meetings. Do you understand what this delay is costing me?" Kendra's expression stayed flat. "I understand there is an investigation happening." Dylan leaned forward as if he could lean his way into control. "You should be supporting me. I'm the one on the floor." Kendra's gaze slid to Lena, then back to Dylan. "It looks like you were on the floor," she said carefully, "because something happened that required security." The crowd murmured again. Dylan heard it, and his eyes flashed. He opened his mouth, then shut it hard, as if he could swallow the humiliation. Holloway turned to the tablet officer. "I want a longer clip. Started earlier." The officer nodded and swiped. The video jumped back. Now the screen showed the gate area minutes before the shove, before the lanyard, before the floor. Lena appeared near the stanchions with her bag still and quiet. Dylan appeared farther away, pacing, then stopping, then angling his body toward her. Holloway watched with stillness that felt heavy. Kendra leaned in, slightly curiosity pulling her toward the screen despite herself. Dylan noticed the shift in their attention. He stood again, unable to stop himself. "That proves nothing," he said quickly. "I'm allowed to stand in an airport." Holloway did not look up. "Sit." Dylan's hands curled into fists. He did not sit immediately. For a second, it looked like he might refuse, like he might step forward and claim space the way he had claimed space in the line. Then he saw the security officers at either side. The phones, the witnesses, the airline supervisor, and something in his face recalculated. He sat down slowly, like a man lowering himself into a position he had sworn he would never take. Lena watched the screen too, not because she needed proof, but because watching gave her something to do with her mind. Besides replaying the moment the lanyard tightened. The earlier footage showed Dylan's posture the way he drifted closer, then paused, then drifted again. It was not a sprint. It was a slow, deliberate line being drawn toward her. Lena felt her stomach tighten. She had told herself he was just loud, just angry, just another airport nuisance looking for someone to blame. The footage made it look different. Not a tantrum, but a choice repeated with patience. Holloway paused the video and looked up at Dylan. "You recognize yourself here." Dylan's jaw jumped. "Yes, so what?" Holloway's voice stayed steady. "So we're establishing a timeline." Dylan shot a look at Kendra as if the airline might save him. "This is a witch hunt," he said. "You people are treating me like a criminal." Kendra did not respond. Her eyes stayed on the tablet, then flicked to Lena's scraped throat again. Her lips pressed together, and she made a small mark on her clipboard. Lena's phone buzzed once more. She could not ignore it this time. She stepped a half-pace back still within Holloway's line of sight and pulled it out. Another message from her sister. "He keeps asking if you boarded." Lena stared at the words until her eyes stung. She typed careful with each letter. "Still delayed, I will call when I can." She slid the phone away and exhaled slowly. Her ribs hurt more when she breathed deep, so she kept her breath shallow and steady. Holloway spoke to the security officer again. "Get me the full camera set for this concourse. I want all views of Gate A9 and the approach routes." The officer nodded and spoke into his radio. Dylan shook his head, lips pulled back in a thin smile that looked more like a snarl. "You're wasting time. I told you what happened." Holloway's eyes met his calm and direct. "And I told you we're verifying it." For the first time, Dylan did not have an answer ready. He looked away, then back at the crowd, then down at his hands. His fingers tapped his knee fast and restless, like his body was trying to outrun the room. Lena stayed quiet, letting the process unfold around her, letting the noise and the stares and the rain exist without touching her. She held on to one thought, simple and stubborn the way she held on to pulse points in a crisis. Boise was still waiting. Officer Holloway stayed beside the tablet like it was an open wound he needed to keep clean. The security officer swiped through camera feeds, pulling up wider angles, then tighter ones, then a view from the ceiling that made everyone look smaller and less important than they believed. On screen, Gate A9 ran like a silent film. Lena stood near the stanchions with her bag on her shoulder, still as a statue. Dylan moved in the background, at first, a sharp shape in a suit, pacing, stopping, turning. He drifted toward the gate desk where Maya stood. Even without audio, the video caught the rhythm of his hands, the way his fingers cut the air like blades. Kendra Walsh leaned in, eyes narrowed. "Is there sound on any of these?" "Not on the public cameras," the security officer said. "Some angles pick up audio when it's close, depending on the mic coverage. We can check." Dylan heard them talking about audio, and his posture tightened. He sat forward, elbows on his knees again, trying to look like a man who belonged in charge of something. "This is ridiculous," he said. "You're building a case out of a few minutes in a line." Holloway did not look away from the screen. "You put your hands on someone," Dylan scoffed. "I touched her badge because she was in my way." Maya's head snapped up. She moved aside. "You kept going." Dylan swung his gaze at her. "Stay out of it. You work for the airline. You people are the reason I'm stuck here." Kendra's voice turned cool. "Mr. Mercer, do not speak to my staff that way." Dylan stared at her, surprised that the airline was not automatically on his side. Then his mouth twisted, and he looked back at Holloway. "This is what I mean," he said. "Everyone is against me because I expect basic competence." Lena stayed near the wall map, shoulders loose, hands relaxed. The water bottle Tess had given her sat cold in her palm. She rolled it once between her fingers, a small motion that kept her grounded. Her ribs ached more now. The pain had a shape dull and wide like a bruise blooming under the fabric. Tess Morgan came back with a clipboard and a pen. "Can you write down what hurts?" and where she asked quietly. "Just for medical documentation." Lena nodded and took the clipboard, writing in block letters like she wrote notes on a patient chart. Left ribs. Sore with deep breath. Neck abrasion. No dizziness. No trouble swallowing. When she handed it back, Tess did not read it in front of anyone. She tucked it against her chest and stayed close without hovering. The tablet footage shifted to the moment Dylan entered the line. From above, his movement looked even more deliberate. He angled straight toward Lena, cutting across open floor like he had chosen the path in advance. He stopped in front of her. His suitcase slid sideways, blocking the line. Lena stepped aside. Dylan stepped with her. Holloway's thumb tapped the screen, pausing at the first suitcase contact. The moment it hit Lena's ribs, her body absorbed it without folding, but her shoulder tightened. It was the tiniest tell, the kind only people who lived inside their bodies for a living would notice. "Play it again," Holloway said. The security officer replayed it. The suitcase moved forward. The contact was visible. A few nearby heads turned, then turned away. On the video, the crowd looked like water around rocks flowing around conflict instead of into it. Kendra exhaled slowly like she was trying not to show anger. Maya's eyes shone again, not with tears this time, but with something sharper. Dylan threw his hands up. It barely touched her. The man in the mariner's cap stepped forward from the witness line. "That is not barely," he said. His voice was firm, now not shaky. "I was right there. I heard it." It hit her hard. Dylan snapped, "Nobody asked you." Holloway's gaze lifted and it landed on Dylan like weight. "I did." Dylan's mouth opened, then it closed. His chest rose and fell fast, and he looked away like he had been slapped. The footage ran to the lanyard grab. The camera caught Dylan's hand reaching the plastic badge, whipping up the quick jerk that pulled Lena into the glass. Even from the ceiling angle, the motion looked wrong. Not accidental, not a brush. It looked like possession. Kendra's jaw tightened. "That is physical contact," she said more to herself than anyone else. Tess shifted her stance closer to Lena, her hands clasped at her waist. She did not touch Lena, but she was there, a quiet wall. Holloway asked, "Do you have his suitcase shove on more than one angle?" The security officer nodded and changed the view. Now the scene played from a camera near a coffee kiosk. This angle caught faces. Dylan's expression as he leaned in smiling. Lena's expression as she kept her eyes level and her mouth calm. The crowd behind them tense and hungry, pretending not to stare while staring anyway. Dylan saw his own face on the screen and flinched. He looked down at the floor tiles like they might offer him a different story. "This is out of context," he said. "You don't know what she said to me." Maya stared at him. She did not say anything. That is what made it so awful. Dylan's head snapped up. "Do not call me awful." Kendra made a small note on her clipboard. The pen scratched once sharp, then stopped. Holloway spoke without raising his voice. "Mr. Mercer, listen carefully. You will not address witnesses. You will not address staff. You will speak to me when I ask you a question." Dylan's laugh came out thin. "I have rights." "You do," Holloway said, "and so does she." Dylan looked toward Lena, then full on eyes hard. For a second, the whole concourse felt smaller. Lena met his stare without blinking, then let her gaze drop away, not because she could not hold it, but because she did not want to feed it. Her phone buzzed again. She did not take it out. She could picture her father in the hospital bed, awake, weak, trying to sound normal. She could picture her sister, sitting in the chair beside him, watching the door, watching the clock. The thought made her stomach tighten in a way the pain in her ribs could not compete with. Holloway's radio crackled. He pressed it. "Go ahead." A voice responded low and quick. Holloway listened, eyes fixed on nothing. The corner of his mouth tightened. He answered with a brief acknowledgement and clipped the radio back. Dylan noticed the change. "What was that?" he demanded. Holloway ignored the question. He turned to the security officer. "Keep pulling earlier footage. Start from when he entered the concourse. I want his path." The security officer nodded and scrubbed back. The camera showed Dylan appearing near the hallway entrance, phone to his ear, walking fast. He stopped at a monitor, stared at it, then turned. He walked toward the gate desk. He leaned in. Maya stepped back. Dylan's arms moved again. The whole thing read like a repeated pattern, his body doing the same argument in different locations. Dylan watched himself and his face went pale around the edges just slightly. He tried to hide it with volume. "Everyone complains at airports," he said. "This is America. People talk. People get frustrated." The woman with silver hair spoke again, voice steady. "Frustration does not put hands on strangers." Dylan shot her a look so sharp it felt like he was trying to cut her with it. "Mind your business." Holloway stepped half a pace closer to Dylan, not looming, just present. "It is my business," he said, "and it became hers when you touched her." Dylan's leg bounced. His fingers drummed against his knee, fast, impatient. He looked toward the open concourse as if he could stand up and walk away and make this end. Then he did stand up. The movement was sudden. He pushed off the chair shoulders, squared the suit jacket, snapping into place like armor. "I'm done," he said. "I have a flight to catch. You can mail me whatever you need." A few people gasped. Not loud. just a quick intake that spread like a ripple. The male security officer moved immediately, stepping into Dylan's path. "Sir, sit back down." Dylan tried to step around him. "Get out of my way." Holloway's hand came up, palm out. "Stop." Dylan did not stop. He leaned forward, trying to press his body into space, the same tactic he had used in the line. He reached toward his suitcase handle, maybe to take it, maybe to create a reason to move. The male security officer caught his forearm, not rough, just firm. Dylan jerked like he had been insulted. "Do not touch me," Dylan snapped. "You are not free to leave, Holloway," said voice still controlled. Dylan twisted his arm, trying to pull away. "This is unlawful." The security officer tightened his grip. Dylan's face flushed again, anger surging like a wave. He tried to wrench free a second time, harder, his shoulder rolling forward. That was the moment Holloway decided. He nodded once to the security officer, a small signal. The female security officer stepped in on Dylan's other side. "Sir, turn around." Dylan froze. His eyes darted to the crowd, to the phones, to Kendra, to Maya, as if he could find someone to stop the room from doing what it was doing. "You can't cuff me," he said, and his voice cracked at the end. Holloway's tone stayed flat. "You just tried to leave during an active investigation and pulled away from an officer. Turn around." Dylan's breath came fast. He looked at the crowd again, and Lena saw something in his eyes that surprised her. Not fear of punishment. Fear of being seen. Then Dylan lunged. It was not a full attack. It was a panicked attempt to move, to break the circle, to regain control. His shoulder drove forward, and for a split second, the security officer's grip slipped. Lena's body reacted before her mind did. Her weight shifted onto the balls of her feet, and her right hand lifted slightly, ready to intercept, ready to protect herself if Dylan surged toward her. Tess noticed the movement and stepped in front of Lena without thinking, a medic's instinct: protect the patient. Lena's hand lowered. She forced herself still again. The security officers regained control in an instant. Dylan's arms were guided behind him, not slammed, not twisted, just placed. Metal cuffs clicked shut. The sound carried. It was small, but it cut through the concourse like a bell. Dylan stood there, cuffed, breathing hard, staring at the floor as if it had betrayed him. Then he lifted his head and tried to speak with authority again, the old tone, the one he had used on Maya and on Lena. "I want a supervisor," he said. "I want my attorney. This is going to destroy you." Kendra's voice was quiet, almost tired. "Mr. Mercer, please stop." Dylan snapped, "Do not tell me to stop." Holloway looked at Kendra. "Do you have his airline record accessible?" Kendra nodded. "I can pull incident notes if there are any. It may take a minute." "Do it," Holloway said. Maya stood close to Kendra now, shoulders tight, as if being near authority made her feel safer. She watched Dylan with a mix of anger and disbelief. The man in the mariner's cap lowered his phone and shook his head slowly. He really thought he could just walk out, he muttered to no one. A few people murmured agreement. Others stayed silent, eyes fixed on the cuffs, on the uniforms, on Lena's scrubs. Lena's ribs pulsed again, sharper this time, and she inhaled carefully through her nose. The air felt thick in her throat where the badge had snapped. She could still feel the scrape of plastic on skin, like a memory that refused to fade. Holloway turned back to the tablet. He watched the footage again, pausing at the moment Dylan's hand reached for Lena's lanyard. He rewound, then paused earlier, at the moment Dylan first noticed her near the window. His finger hovered over the screen as if he was tracing the path of a decision. Kendra returned, phone in hand. Her face had shifted. The forced smile was gone. Even the professional neutrality looked strained. "I pulled up the passenger profile," she said quietly to Holloway. "There are notes." Dylan's head snapped toward her. What notes, he demanded. Kendra did not answer him. She spoke to Holloway, eyes down on the screen, as if she did not want to look at Dylan while she said it. "There have been complaints about behavior at gates, about staff being threatened. There is a record." Dylan's mouth fell open for a fraction of a second before he snapped it shut. "Those are lies," he said quickly. "Those are misunderstandings. People are sensitive." Holloway did not react. He simply held out his hand for the phone. Kendra handed it over. Lena watched Dylan's face as Holloway read. The arrogance did not vanish, but it tightened. The confident heat in his eyes cooled into calculation again. Lena's own phone buzzed once more. She did not reach for it. She stood with her shoulders relaxed and her hands visible the way she had stayed from the moment security arrived while the rain battered the glass and the concourse held steady around the quiet click of evidence being gathered. Officer Holloway read the notes on Kendra's phone without changing his face, but the air around him shifted anyway. It was subtle, the way his shoulders set, the way his attention narrowed, the way he stopped treating the scene like an isolated flare-up and started treating it like part of a pattern. Dylan watched Holloway's eyes move across the screen. Even cuffed, he tried to lean into the space hungry to control whatever was being said about him. "Those are nothing," Dylan said quickly. "People complain about everything. You know how it is. If you do your job, someone gets upset." Holloway lifted his gaze. "You have multiple complaints for aggressive behavior in airports." Dylan's mouth tightened. Aggressive. That word means nothing. It's corporate nonsense. Kendra's voice stayed professional, but there was an edge to it now. "It means my staff documented incidents, sir." Maya stood beside her supervisor with her hands clasped in front of her, like she was holding herself together. She looked at Dylan with disbelief, as if she could not understand how he still had the energy to argue after what everyone had just watched. Holloway handed Kendra's phone back. "Thank you." Then he turned to one of the security officers. "I want a full export of the concourse cameras for the last 20 minutes. Include the approach routes." The officer nodded and spoke into his radio. Dylan pulled his cuffed hands upward as if the gesture alone could make him larger. "So now you're digging through my history. Great. This is harassment." Meanwhile, she's standing there free. Holloway glanced at Lena. Lena stood near the wall map, the bottle of water still in her hand, her scrubs hanging heavy on her frame like she had borrowed them from a version of herself that belonged somewhere else. The red mark under her jaw had darkened into an angry line. She felt the bruise forming along her ribs with each careful breath. Tess Morgan had positioned herself a few steps away, not in Lena's space, just close enough to catch her if her knees decided to give out. Tess did not look at Dylan. She looked at Lena as if the rest of the scene was just noise. Holloway walked over to Lena, keeping his voice low. "I need your identification." Lena nodded. She reached into her bag, slowly, careful, visible. She pulled out her driver's license and her hospital badge, the plastic edges dulled from constant use. She handed them over. Holloway read her name, her address, her date of birth. He looked at the hospital badge next. Harborview Medical Center. The photo showed Lena with her hair neatly down and a rare, soft smile, a version of her that did not look like she had been awake for a full day. "You work ICU," Holloway said. "Yes," Lena replied. Holloway handed everything back. "Do you want to press charges?" The question landed like weight on her chest, not because she did not know the answer, but because she could feel everything it would drag behind it. Time, paperwork, court dates, calls from unknown numbers. More attention, more waiting. Lena glanced at the gate screen in the distance. Delayed still blinked stubborn and bright. "I want to go home," she said quietly. Holloway watched her for a moment. "That's not an answer." Lena's throat stung where the badge had snapped. She swallowed carefully. "He assaulted me." "Yes." Holloway nodded once, as if he had expected it. "All right." Across the open space, Dylan snapped his head up. "Press charges for what?" "She's the one who slammed me to the ground." Holloway turned back to him. "You put your hands on her first. You used your luggage to strike her. You grabbed her lanyard and pulled her into a glass wall." Dylan's face flushed. "That is your interpretation." "It is on video," Holloway replied. Dylan rattled the cuffs. "Take these off. I am not a criminal." Holloway did not argue. He gestured to the medics. "Check him." Dylan's eyes widened. "I told you no. I'm not letting anyone touch me." Tess stepped forward anyway, her tone calm and practiced. "Sir, I am a medic. I need to assess for injuries. It protects you as much as anyone else." "I don't need protection," Dylan barked. Then his voice faltered for half a second. "My shoulder hurts. My wrist hurts." She twisted my arm. Tess nodded like she had heard the same sentence 1,000 times. Okay, where does it hurt? Point with your chin. Dylan jerked his chin toward his right shoulder. Tess examined him without drama. She checked the range of motion as much as the cuffs allowed, watched his face for signs of real pain versus performance, and looked down at his wrist. This is mild swelling, she said. No obvious deformity. You can get a full evaluation after the police finish. If you feel numbness or tingling, you tell me. Dylan's eyes darted to the crowd as if he wanted the word swelling to be heard by everyone. See? Injury. Tess did not react. She turned slightly so her body shielded her notes. You are breathing fine. Your color is fine. You are alert. Dylan sneered. Thanks, nurse. Tess's eyes flicked up, and for the first time, her voice sharpened. I'm not your nurse. I'm here to document. Silence fell for a beat. The crowd did not cheer. They did not clap. They simply watched, and that was worse for Dylan. It meant no one was playing his game. Holloway returned to the tablet. Another angle appeared closer, and this one caught Dylan's face when he spoke to Lena, the way his mouth curled, the way his eyes narrowed when she did not react. It showed Lena stepping aside. Her shoulders relaxed, and Dylan stepping with her, like her movement belonged to him. Kendra leaned in again, her clipboard tucked under her arm. That is not an accident, she murmured. Maya's voice came out small. He did that to me first. He kept stepping closer, no matter how far I backed up. Dylan snapped, stop talking. Holloway looked up. You will not address staff. Dylan shook his head fast, breathing harder. You are letting them poison this. Everyone is emotional. Nobody is being objective. Holloway tapped the screen at the moment Dylan's hand reached for Lena's lanyard. He paused it. Dylan's fingers were frozen, mid-grab, Lena's badge swinging her neck exposed. Objective, Holloway repeated. This is objective. Dylan stared at the frozen image of himself. His jaw clenched. She provoked me. Holloway kept his finger on the tablet. How? Dylan blinked, caught. She was smirking. Lena's eyes lifted. They were tired, but clear. I did not speak to you, she said. Dylan twisted in his seat, cuffed hands shifting behind him. That's the point. You people act superior. You stand there like you're too good to answer. Lena did not move. I moved away. I gave you space. Dylan's voice rose. Space? You were in my way. Kendra stepped closer, her tone controlled. Mr. Mercer, there is no such thing as your way through another person. Dylan laughed sharp and humorless. Oh, please. Holloway raised a hand, and the sound died. I am done listening to your commentary. You will answer questions when asked. Dylan's nostrils flared. You think you can talk to me like that? Holloway's voice stayed calm. I am. Dylan looked away, eyes shining with anger, and something else that did not fit his usual posture. Uncertainty again. A crack in the armor. One of the security officers returned with a small stack of printed forms and a thumb drive. Camera exports are in progress. We have the first batch saved. Holloway nodded. Good. Another radio crackled and Holloway listened. His eyes flicked toward Lena, then back to Dylan. He did not share what he heard. He simply clipped the radio back and turned to Kendra. Do you have authority to restrict his travel today? Holloway asked. Kendra's expression tightened. With law enforcement recommendation, yes. Dylan's head snapped up. No, absolutely not. You cannot keep me from flying because she decided to play action hero. Lena's ribs pulsed as if the words had weight. She kept her face neutral. Holloway looked at Dylan. You are being investigated for assault in a secured area. You will not board a flight until this is resolved. Dylan shook his head, eyes wide now. I have a contract. I have meetings. I have people waiting. Holloway's answer was simple, not my problem. The phrase landed like a slap. Dylan stared, stunned, as if he had never heard an authority figure refuse to negotiate with him. He leaned forward again, voice dropping into a more polished tone, the one he probably used in conference rooms when he wanted people to feel small without noticing it. Officer, you're making a mistake. I know how these things go. This gets ugly. People lose jobs over misunderstandings. Holloway looked at him without blinking. You lost control in public. That is what happened. Dylan's polished tone snapped. I did not lose control. She attacked me. Holloway turned away from him and addressed the witness line. Anyone who recorded, stay available. We may need you to send the original file, not a clipped version. A young man stepped forward holding his phone up. I can send it now. Holloway nodded. Give it to that officer. The man handed his phone over. Another person followed, then another. The evidence pile grew quietly, one file at a time. Lena watched the line. She could feel the strange split inside her, the part that wanted to disappear, and the part that stayed alert, cataloging faces and exits like she always did in crowded places. Her body had not forgotten how to be ready. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She felt the vibration against her hip like a heartbeat. She pulled it out, keeping her movements slow, visible. A call this time. Her sister's name lit the screen. Lena hesitated, then looked at Holloway. Can I answer? Holloway nodded. Keep it short. Lena lifted the phone to her ear. Mara. Her sister's voice came through tight and worried. Lena, are you on the plane? Dad is asking. He keeps looking at the door. Lena closed her eyes for a brief second, just long enough to steady herself. I'm delayed. There was an incident. I'm okay. What kind of incident? Lena looked at the floor, at the scuffed line where the stanchion base had dragged at some point. A man assaulted me. Police are here. A sharp inhale on the other end. Are you hurt? I'm sore. I'm fine. Lena's voice stayed calm, but her throat tightened anyway. Tell Dad I'm trying. Mara's voice dropped. Do you want me to come get you? No. Lena swallowed. Stay with him. Okay, Mara whispered. Okay. Call me as soon as you can. I will. Lena ended the call and slid the phone back into her pocket with a careful hand. Her ribs hurt more now, like the body had heard her say fine, and decided to argue. Tess noticed her breathing and stepped closer. You good, Tess? Asked quietly. Lena nodded. Just bruising. Tess's eyes went to the mark under Lena's jaw again. Neck bruises can feel worse later. If you get dizzy, say it. I will. Holloway approached Lena again, his voice low so the crowd could not feed on it. I'm going to move you and him to a quieter area. We need formal statements without an audience. Lena nodded. A quieter area sounded like relief and trap at the same time. Relief from phones. Trap because it meant time. Dylan heard Holloway speak and immediately resisted. No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not being dragged to some back room like a criminal. Holloway gestured to the security officers. Stand him up. The officers guided Dylan to his feet. Dylan tried to pull his shoulders back into dominance, but the cuffs changed his balance. He looked awkward, like a man wearing the wrong body. He turned his head toward Lena as they began to move, and his voice dropped into something venomous. You're going to regret this. Lena did not answer. She watched Holloway's hands, watched the spacing, watched the crowd. She stepped when told, staying close enough to be guided, but not close enough to be grabbed again. As they walked down the concourse, phones tracked them like eyes. The rain still hammered the glass. The delay still blinked on the gate screen behind them. Lena's travel bag pulled at her shoulder, heavier now, as if the day had packed stones into it. Kendra stayed back with Maya, already talking into her phone, voice clipped professional, urgent. Tess walked alongside Lena, not as an escort, but as a witness, with a medic's calm. Dylan kept talking as they moved, throwing words behind him, like he could build a wall from them. This is discrimination. This is absurd. I'm going to sue. I'm going to call corporate. I'm going to have all of you fired. No one responded. Lena focused on the sound of her own breathing and the steady rhythm of Holloway's steps ahead of her. She kept her eyes forward, shoulders loose, hands visible, moving through the airport, like she moved through the ICU, one controlled motion at a time. They moved off the concourse and into a corridor that smelled like floor cleaner and stale coffee, the kind of back hallway travelers never notice unless something has gone wrong. The noise of Gate A9 faded behind them, replaced by the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft chatter of radios. Officer Holloway led with an unhurried pace. Two security officers walked Dylan in the middle, hands cuffed behind his back suit jacket, riding up at the shoulders. Dylan kept talking anyway, words spilling out like he could fill the space with authority. "You're making a huge mistake," he said. "This is going to be a nightmare for your department. I know people. I travel constantly. I spend money here." No one answered. Lena walked a few steps behind travel bag, still on her shoulder water bottle in her hand. Tess stayed on her left side close enough that Lena could feel her presence without feeling managed. Every so often, Tess's eyes flicked to Lena's neck, then to her breathing the quick professional scan of someone trained to catch small changes before they become big ones. At a secured door, Holloway tapped a code. The lock clicked. They entered a small office area with beige walls, framed safety posters, and a row of plastic chairs bolted to the floor. A camera sat in the corner like a quiet witness that never blinked. Holloway stopped and pointed without drama. "Mr. Mercer, you sit there." Dylan stiffened. "I am not sitting in some holding room." Holloway's gaze stayed level. "Sit." The security officers guided Dylan down. Dylan sat with a jerk, shoulders tight, jaw locked. He looked around as if he expected the room to applaud him for enduring this. Holloway turned to Lena. "Ma'am, we'll take you in the next room for a statement." Lena nodded. She followed him through another door into a smaller interview room. 2 chairs, a table, a mounted camera. The air was cooler here, almost too cool, and it raised goosebumps on her forearms beneath the thin scrub sleeves. Holloway pulled out his notebook and placed it flat. "Before we start, I want to confirm you're not in immediate medical distress." "I'm not," Lena said. "Any dizziness? Any trouble swallowing? Any sharp pain?" "No," Lena replied, then corrected herself. "My ribs hurt, but it's dull. My neck stings." Tess stood in the corner with her clipboard, quiet, not inserting herself unless asked. Holloway glanced at her and nodded, acknowledging her presence as part of the documentation, not as a friend. Holloway folded his hands. "Tell me from the beginning." "Take your time." Lena stared at the tabletop for a second. The laminate had a scratch shaped like a hook. Her mind wanted to snag on it to stay somewhere simple. She forced herself to speak. "I came from work," she said. "I was waiting at the gate. I heard him arguing with the gate agent. He came into the line and stepped in front of me. He said I didn't belong in priority boarding because of my scrubs. I did not respond. I moved aside. He shoved his suitcase into my ribs. I told him to step back. He shoved it again. Then he grabbed my lanyard and pulled me into the glass. At that point, I restrained him." Holloway nodded slowly. "Describe the restraint." "I controlled his wrist and took him down using his forward motion. I did not strike him. I held him until security arrived. Then I released him immediately." "Did you threaten him?" "No." "Did you call him names?" "Did you touch him before he touched you?" "No." Holloway wrote, then looked up. "When you told him to step back, where were your hands?" "On my bag strap," Lena said. "At my side. Not on him." Tess made a small note on her clipboard. Holloway asked, "Do you have any witnesses you personally know?" "No," Lena replied. "I was alone." Holloway nodded again. "Do you want medical treatment beyond an assessment?" Lena hesitated. She thought about bruising, about how it would look in a day or two, about her father waiting. "No," she said. "Just document it." Holloway's pen scratched. "We will." Lena felt her phone vibrate in her pocket, faint but insistent. She ignored it, then the vibration returned longer this time. She exhaled carefully through her nose and looked at Holloway. "My family is waiting for me," she said. "Can I send a message?" Holloway held up a hand, not stopping her, just setting a boundary. "Do it quickly. No calls right now." Lena pulled her phone out and typed with one thumb. Still delayed. "I'm okay." Police statement. "Stay with Dad." She sent it and slid the phone back into her pocket, the movement small and controlled. Holloway watched her for a beat. "You said you want to press charges." "Yes," Lena said. "Assault and battery," Holloway confirmed. "That includes using an object to strike you. Also harassment based on witness statements. We will determine the final charges after reviewing footage." Lena nodded, not trusting herself to respond with anything beyond that. In the ICU, she had learned how quickly words could become something a family member clung to. Here, words would become paperwork. Holloway stood. "I'm going to step out for a moment. A supervisor will bring your written statement for you to review and sign." Lena nodded again. Tess shifted closer once Holloway left her voice low. You holding up? I'm fine, Lena said automatically, then corrected it, the same way she corrected patient charts. I'm tired. Tess's expression softened just slightly. That's allowed. Lena gave a small, humorless breath that could have been a laugh if she had any energy left. She stared at the camera in the corner and reminded herself to keep her shoulders loose. In a room like this, tension looked like guilt to people who wanted simple stories. The door opened and a woman in a different uniform stepped in, airport police supervisor, hair pulled tight, tablet in hand. Ms. Carter, I'm Sergeant Ramirez. I need you to review this summary and confirm it's accurate. She slid a printed statement across the table with a pen. Lena read it carefully. The words were clean, factual, stripped of emotion. Time, location, sequence of actions. She corrected one detail about the exact wording she used. It was step back, not back up, Lena said. Ramirez nodded and made the change. Sign here and here. Lena signed, her handwriting steady. Tess watched her hands, satisfied. Ramirez collected the paper. Thank you. We may contact you later if the case moves forward. For now, you can wait in the lobby area just outside. Do not return to the gate until we clear it. Lena stood slowly. Her ribs protested a deep bruise waking up. She kept her face neutral, like she kept her face neutral when a patient's family asked if it hurt, and she did not want to scare them. In the hallway, the waiting area felt different from the concourse. Quieter, less air, no windows. The same plastic chairs bolted to the floor, but here they were meant to keep people from wandering. Dylan sat across the room, still cuffed knees bouncing. When he saw Lena, his eyes narrowed. Look who gets to walk around, he said, voice loud in the small space. Because she knows how to play the victim. A security officer stepped closer to him. Do not speak to her. Dylan stared at the officer, then looked back at Lena. You think you're special because you wear scrubs. You think you can do whatever you want. Lena did not answer. She sat down in a chair along the wall, travel bag at her feet, hands resting loosely on her knees. She stared at a safety poster about reporting unattended luggage. Tess stayed nearby, writing a final note on her clipboard. She leaned down and spoke quietly. If he keeps going, tell me. I can document that too. Lena nodded without looking up. Officer Holloway returned with a file folder and stepped into the center of the room. Mr. Mercer, he said. We are taking your statement now. Dylan sat up straighter. Finally. Holloway sat in a chair across from him and opened the folder. Full name, date of birth, address. Dylan gave the information, clipped, irritated, like reciting it was beneath him. Holloway asked, Did you use your suitcase to make contact with Ms. Carter's body? Dylan's eyes flashed. I moved my luggage. In a crowded line. People bump. This is an airport. Holloway's voice stayed steady. Did you make contact? Dylan hesitated, then tried to twist it into something smaller. Maybe. Lightly. She's exaggerating. Holloway asked, Did you grab her lanyard? Dylan scoffed. I touched it. She was ignoring me. Holloway wrote, then looked up. Did you pull her into the glass? Dylan's mouth opened, then shut. I did not pull her. She stepped back and bumped herself. The security officer with the tablet stood behind Holloway and tapped the screen. A still frame showed Dylan's hand gripping the lanyard. The strap tight, Lena's shoulders angled into the glass. Dylan's eyes flicked to it, and his voice climbed. That's a screenshot. That proves nothing. People grab things. It's not a crime to grab a piece of plastic. Holloway did not react. He asked, Did you hear her tell you to step back? Dylan laughed. She mumbled something. I couldn't even understand her. Holloway asked, After she told you to step back, did you stop? Dylan leaned forward, cuffed hands, pulling his shoulders back awkwardly. No, because I didn't have to. She doesn't get to order me around. Holloway's pen stopped. He looked at Dylan, and for a second the room went very still. Then Holloway spoke again. You understand that refusal after a clear warning supports intent. Dylan's nostrils flared. Intent. Are you serious? You're trying to make me sound like a criminal. Holloway turned a page in the folder, calm. We have multiple witness statements and multiple videos. We have airline staff testimony. We have camera footage. Dylan shook his head fast. You have people who hate me because I demand standards. Kendra Walsh entered the room at that moment, phone to her ear, then lowered it as she saw Holloway. She looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with flights. "Officer," she said quietly, "I have the passenger account open. I can provide the incident notes and the airline policy statement." Holloway nodded. "Thank you." Dylan's head whipped toward her. "You can't do this. I am a premium customer." Kendra's voice stayed controlled. "Mr. Mercer, you are currently part of a police investigation. Customer status is not relevant." Dylan's face flushed darker. "I will make sure your company regrets this." Kendra did not answer him. She handed Holloway her phone and a printed page. Holloway glanced at the page, then handed it back. "Security," Holloway said, "please keep him seated." The security officer stepped closer, a physical reminder. Dylan stared at the wall, breathing hard through his nose. When he spoke again, his tone shifted into something smoother, forced. "Officer, let's be reasonable. I can apologize. I can go. This is a misunderstanding, and we can all move on." Holloway's eyes stayed level. "You are cuffed because you attempted to leave and resisted an officer. You are not moving on right now." Dylan's smooth tone cracked. "This is insane." Lena listened from her chair, the words washing over her like noise from a distant TV. She pressed her fingers lightly into her thigh and focused on the pressure. Anchor points. Simple sensations keep the body calm. A different officer entered with a small evidence bag and a label printer. "We've received 3 original video files so far," he said to Holloway. "More incoming. We're logging them." Holloway nodded. "Good. Make sure we keep originals. No edits." The officer set the bag on a counter and began labeling. Kendra looked at Lena from across the room, her expression careful. "Ms. Carter," she said once, "law enforcement clears you, we will rebook you. I cannot promise an exact departure time because of weather, but we will take care of your ticket." Lena nodded. "Thank you." Dylan snapped. "You're rebooking her. This is unbelievable." Kendra's gaze cut to him flat. "You are not traveling tonight." Dylan stared at her as if she had spoken a foreign language. "You can't ban me." Kendra's voice stayed even. "I can deny boarding for safety. And I will." Dylan's mouth worked, searching for a threat big enough to fix it. None came out clean. Holloway stood and closed the folder. "Mr. Mercer, we are not finished. You will remain here." Dylan leaned forward again, voice harsh. "I want to see the footage. I want to face my accusers. I want my attorney." Holloway nodded once. "You can request counsel. We are still collecting evidence." The room settled into a tense quiet, broken only by radios and the soft click of the label printer. Outside the hall, footsteps moved past life, continuing in the airport, like nothing had happened. Lena felt her phone buzz again. She did not pull it out this time. She stared at the safety poster and kept her breathing shallow, ribs tight. Holloway walked to the tablet officer near the doorway. He spoke low enough that only the officer could hear. The officer nodded and tapped, bringing up a new camera angle. Holloway watched for a moment, then asked quietly, "Can you rewind that and show me the hallway entrance again?" The tablet officer swiped back and the video shifted to an earlier timestamp. Holloway's eyes narrowed, tracking movement on the screen with the same focus he had used on Dylan's statement. Lena did not know what he was looking at. She only saw the set of his shoulders change and the way he kept watching as if he needed to be sure. Officer Holloway kept his eyes on the tablet, replaying the earlier timestamp until the rest of the room blurred into background noise. The hallway entrance camera showed the concourse from a distance, a wide view where people became shapes and patterns. Dylan Mercer appeared near the entrance with his phone to his ear, walking fast. He stopped. He looked up at the gate screens. He turned his head. Then he saw Lena. Even from the grain of the camera, Holloway could track the moment. Dylan's posture changed. His pacing slowed. His feet angled in her direction, then drifted away, like he was pretending it was coincidence. A few steps, a pause, a glance, another few steps. He circled once, not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to keep her in view. He watched her the way some people watch a door they plan to walk through. Holloway scrubbed forward. Dylan moved again. Lena shifted her bag on her shoulder and chose a spot near the window. Dylan stopped near a kiosk, stared at the menu without reading it, then turned his body so he could still see her. He did it again near a charging station. Again near the gate desk. Again. Holloway looked up from the screen and met the tablet officer's eyes. "How long is that?" The officer tapped the time code. "About 8 minutes from when he entered the concourse until he made contact." Holloway nodded slowly. 8 minutes was not a tantrum that happened by accident. 8 minutes was a choice held in place, repeated over and over until it turned into action. Across the room, Dylan's voice rose, strained with the pressure of being contained. "Are we done with this yet? This is insane. I want to leave." A security officer stood close enough to make it clear that leaving was not available. Holloway stepped away from the tablet and walked back into the center of the holding area, file folder in hand. He did not raise his voice, but the quiet in the room pulled toward him anyway. "Mr. Mercer, he said you followed her." Dylan blinked fast. "What?" Holloway kept his tone even. "You entered the concourse. You saw her. You tracked her position for several minutes. Then you approached her in line." Dylan's face flushed, then tightened. "That is not what happened. I was walking around. People walk around in airports." Holloway nodded once, as if acknowledging the sentence without accepting it. "You stopped multiple times with no purpose other than watching her. That is what the cameras show." Dylan laughed thin and sharp. "Cameras show whatever you want them to show." Kendra Walsh stood a few feet away, arms folded now, clipboard pressed to her side. She looked like someone trying very hard to keep her expression neutral. Maya hovered behind her eyes, fixed on Dylan, as if she could not decide whether to hate him or fear him. Holloway turned to the officer at the doorway. "Dispatch, did you get the basic check results?" The officer looked down at his phone, then back up. "Yes." He handed Holloway a small printed sheet, still warm from a nearby printer. Holloway scanned it, then lowered it slightly. His eyes went to Dylan. "You have prior incident reports involving airport staff." Dylan's head snapped up. "No, I do not." Kendra's voice cut in, clipped. "Our internal record shows incident notes, Mr. Mercer." "More than one." Dylan stared at her. "Those are misunderstandings. People are dramatic." "I complain. That's not a crime." Holloway did not argue the word crime. He looked at Dylan with the calm patience of someone who had heard the same protest in different bodies. One report includes threatening language toward a gate agent. Another includes refusal to comply with staff instructions. Dylan leaned forward in his chair, cuffed hands pulling his shoulders back awkwardly. "So what?" "None of that has anything to do with this." Holloway's voice stayed level. "It speaks to pattern." The word landed heavy. Dylan's mouth opened, then closed, and for a moment he looked less like a man in control and more like a man realizing his own history had hands. Lena sat along the wall, travel bag at her feet, shoulders loose, hands resting on her knees. She watched without moving. The quiet inside her felt thinner, now stretched by exhaustion and pain, and the stubborn fear that time was running away from her. Her father's face floated in her mind, that weak half-smile he used when he wanted her to stop worrying. She could almost hear his voice asking if she made it to the gate. Tess Morgan stood near Lena, still holding her clipboard. Tess did not look at Dylan. She watched Lena's breathing, the careful rise and fall of her chest that avoided deep breaths. Holloway turned slightly toward Lena and lowered his voice. "Ms. Carter, earlier you said you have restrained patients. That technique was controlled. Very controlled." Lena did not react. "I did what I had to do." "I'm not accusing you," Holloway said. "I'm asking a clean question. Do you have formal defensive training outside of hospital setting?" Lena's throat tightened. She had avoided the question earlier because it invited attention, and attention had teeth. But the room was already full of evidence. The cameras did not need her secrets. They needed the truth. She nodded once. Yes. Holloway waited. He did not push with his voice. He let silence do the work. Lena exhaled carefully. "I served," she said. "Before nursing." Kendra's eyes flicked toward her, surprise breaking through professional composure for a second. Maya's eyebrows lifted, then settled. Dylan heard the word served and turned his head sharply. There it is, he snapped. You see? She's trained. She's dangerous. Holloway looked at Dylan without expression. You are cuffed. You will stop talking. Dylan's mouth worked, but the security officer shifted closer, and the words died. Holloway kept his gaze on Lena. Branch. Lena hesitated. She hated how the room suddenly felt smaller around that information, like she had just admitted to carrying something sharp. Air Force, she said. Medical rescue. I got out and went to nursing school. Tessa's eyes softened in a way that looked like recognition, not surprise. She had seen it before, that quiet competence that came from lives lived under pressure. Holloway nodded slowly, then asked, Do you have any veteran identification on you? Anything that confirms service for the record? Lena reached into her bag again, slow and visible, and pulled out a worn wallet. Her fingers paused on the edge of a card she rarely showed. She slid it out and handed it over. Holloway examined it careful. The photo was older, her hair tighter, her face harder in a way she had not noticed until she saw it framed in plastic. The card carried her name, her service information, and an expiration date long past. Holloway's eyes lifted to hers. Staff Sergeant. Lena nodded. Holloway handed it back. Thank you. That stays in your file as context for capability and restraint, not as blame. Lena took the card and returned it to her wallet, then to her bag. She could feel eyes on her scrubs again, but now they were different eyes. Curious, recalculating, the kind of eyes that wanted to turn her into a headline instead of a person who just wanted to sit beside her father's bed. Kendra cleared her throat and forced her focus back to procedure. Officer with the passenger record and now the statements I need to file an incident report with corporate safety. Holloway nodded. Do it. Maya spoke softly, voice steadier than before. He was watching her. I felt it when he turned from me. It was like he needed someone weaker. Dylan snapped again, unable to stop himself. Weaker. Are you serious? She put me on the ground. Maya's eyes flashed. Because you put your hands on her. The security officer stepped closer to Dylan. Sir, stop. Dylan glared, breathing hard, cuffed hands flexing behind him. This is unbelievable. You're all on her side because she plays quiet. She stood there acting like she was above answering. That's what set me off. Lena did not look at him. She stared at the safety poster on the wall, letters about unattended bags, swimming slightly as her body tried to recover from stress. She pressed her fingers into her thigh again, anchoring herself. Holloway turned back to the tablet. He replayed the 8 minutes again, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to lock the timeline into something unbreakable. He paused on Dylan standing near the kiosk, head angled toward Lena. He paused on Dylan drifting closer, then away. He paused on the moment Dylan stepped into the line and blocked it with his suitcase. Then Holloway looked at the officer with the evidence bag. Log that timeline as targeted approach. Add the pre-contact tracking to the report. The officer nodded and wrote. Dylan's face went tight. Targeted, he repeated, mocking the word. This is insane. I did not target anyone. Holloway spoke without heat. You chose her. Dylan leaned forward, voice rising. I chose the front of the line. She was standing there. That's it. Holloway's gaze stayed level. You did not stop when she moved aside. You did not stop when she told you to step back. You did not stop when you put your hands on her. Dylan shook his head fast, as if denial could shake loose the cameras. You're twisting everything. Kendra's phone rang. She stepped aside to answer it, voice low. Lena caught fragments, corporate safety incident notes, passenger law enforcement involved. Kendra's shoulders stiffened as she listened, then she glanced toward Dylan with a look she tried to hide. When she ended the call, she returned to Holloway. Corporate wants his full identity confirmed. They also want a copy of the footage timestamps. Holloway nodded. They will get it. Dylan heard the word corporate and straightened, hope flaring. Yes, he said quickly. Call them. They'll fix this. They know me. Kendra's expression stayed flat. Corporate safety does not fix anything. They document. Dylan stared at her. You're enjoying this. Kendra did not answer. She only looked at the cuffs, then at Lena's scraped throat, then back at Dylan. Holloway opened his folder again and turned to a new page. Mr. Mercer, you are being detained pending formal processing for assault and for resisting during an active investigation. Dylan's eyes widened. Detained. You cannot say that. Holloway's voice stayed calm. I can. And I am. Dylan's breathing sped up. He looked around the room, searching for someone to interrupt reality on his behalf. The security officers stood still. Maya kept her eyes down. Kendra held her clipboard close. Tess watched Lena. Lena watched nothing in particular, her face controlled. Dylan swallowed hard, then tried a different tone, smoother, lower. Officer, be reasonable. I can apologize. I can make this go away. I can compensate her. Lena's jaw tightened. Not anger. Something colder. She stayed silent. Holloway looked at Dylan for a long beat. You do not get to negotiate with consequences in this room. Dylan's smooth tone cracked into rage. This is going to ruin me. Holloway closed the folder. Stand by. He stepped to the doorway and spoke to another officer in the hall, low enough that Lena could not hear the words. The other officer nodded and walked away. For a moment, the room settled into a tense quiet. The fluorescent hum felt louder. The evidence labels clicked in the background as another file was added to the bag. Lena's ribs pulsed and she breathed shallow, careful not to trigger the sharp edge of pain. Tess leaned closer and spoke softly. Do you need ibuprofen? Lena shook her head. Not yet. Tess nodded. Okay. Dylan shifted in his seat again, cuffs clinking faintly. He looked at Lena and his voice dropped into something bitter. You think you're better than me. Lena lifted her eyes to him for the first time in the holding area. Her gaze was tired, steady, and empty of the reaction he wanted. She said nothing, then looked away again. The door opened. Another airport police officer stepped in with a stack of forms and a small handheld device for fingerprints. He nodded to Holloway. Holloway took the forms, glanced over them, and looked at Dylan. We're moving forward. Dylan's face tightened and his chest rose and fell faster. Lena sat very still, hands resting on her knees, travel bag at her feet. Scrubs, wrinkled throat, marked mind, fixed on a single image she could not shake. Her father, awake, asking for her, waiting for footsteps that were not arriving yet. The fingerprint device sat on the table, like something small that could change a life. Officer Holloway laid the forms out in a neat stack, then looked at Dylan. Stand up. Hands out in front. Dylan rose with a stiff motion suit jacket pulling tight across his shoulders. The security officer unlocked the cuffs just long enough to reposition them to the front. Dylan flexed his wrists as if he could shake off the humiliation, then tried to recover his voice. This is excessive, he said. I have done nothing wrong. Holloway did not answer. He guided Dylan's right hand onto the scanner. The device beeped a clean digital sound that felt louder than it should have in a beige room. Dylan stared at Lena as the scanner took his prints. Not pleading, not apologizing, measuring. Lena kept her eyes on the floor. Holloway moved through the process with steady efficiency. Thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky, then the other hand. Dylan's breath grew sharper each time the device beeped like the sound itself was an accusation. When it was done, Holloway resecured the cuffs and signaled to the officer by the door. We're transferring him to holding for processing. Dylan jerked his head up. Holding. For what? I want my attorney. You can request a phone call when you're in holding. Holloway said. Right now, you move. Dylan took a step, then stopped. He tried to straighten his spine to reclaim the posture that made people back away in boardrooms and airport lines. It looked different with cuffs on. It looked like performance. You're making a mistake, he said, and his voice tried for calm but landed brittle. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Holloway met his eyes. I do. The security officers guided Dylan out. The door closed behind him and the room exhaled. Kendra Walsh lowered her clipboard and rubbed a thumb along the edge like she was smoothing down a frayed nerve. Maya stood close to her arms, folded tight across her chest, watching the door Dylan had gone through as if she expected him to burst back in. Sergeant Ramirez approached Lena. Ms. Carter, you're cleared to leave this area, she said. We will contact you if we need anything else. Lena nodded, but her body stayed still for a beat. Leaving meant going back into the airport where everyone had a phone and a story. It also meant time moving again, and time had been the one thing she could not stop thinking about. "I need to get to Boise," Lena said. Kendra stepped forward immediately. "I'm going to rebook you," she said. "Come with me. We'll do it away from the gate." They walked down the hallway and back out into a side corridor that connected to a smaller customer service desk. The noise of the concourse returned in pieces. Rolling bags. Announcements, a burst of laughter from a bar near the food court. Rain still rattled the windows, heavy and relentless. A few travelers recognized Lena as she passed. She caught the quick double takes. The phone that lifted, then lowered. The whisper into a partner's ear. She kept her gaze forward and her shoulders loose, moving like she did in the hospital when she had to pass through a waiting room full of anxious families. Don't rush. Don't react. Don't invite anyone to pull you into their panic. Tess Morgan stayed with her until Kendra took over. Then Tess stopped and gave Lena a small card. "If you need medical documentation later, call this number," Tess said. "It's the medic office." Lena accepted it. "Thank you." Tess nodded once, then turned back toward the holding area without another word. At the small desk, Kendra typed fast eyes, flicking between screens. "Flights to Boise are backed up," she said. "Weather is pushing everything around. There's one later tonight with a connection through Portland. If that cancels, I can put you on the first morning departure." Lena's stomach tightened. She pictured her father looking at the door. She forced her voice steady. "Put me on whatever gets me there earliest." Kendra nodded. "Done." Maya appeared behind them, holding a cup of water like an offering. "I'm sorry," she said to Lena, and her voice trembled on the word. "I should have called sooner." Lena shook her head. "You did what you could." Maya swallowed. "He was awful to you." Lena did not answer that. She only adjusted her bag strap and tucked the boarding pass into the outer pocket like she was filing paperwork. When Lena stepped away from the desk, her phone buzzed hard in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw 3 missed calls from Mara, 2 texts from her, and 1 unknown number that had called twice. A message from a coworker at Harborview popped up beneath them. "Are you okay? Someone just sent me a video." Lena stared at the screen. Her throat tightened. She typed back with her thumb. "I'm okay. I'm still at the airport." Another text came in this time from a number she did not have saved. "That was you at SeaTac, right? You dropped that guy." Lena locked the phone and slid it away, but the buzzing kept coming as if the device itself had turned into a heartbeat she could not escape. She found a quieter corner near a closed newsstand and sat with her bag at her feet. The bruise in her ribs felt deeper now that she was still. She took a careful breath, then another. She touched the scrape under her jaw. The skin was hot and tender. Her phone buzzed again. She answered Mara this time, keeping her voice low. Lena Mara said the word packed with relief and fear. "Dad keeps asking. He's awake, he's lucid, and he keeps asking if you're close." "I'm delayed," Lena said. "I'm trying." "Are you hurt?" Lena replied. "Not bad." There was a pause. Then Mara's voice dropped. "Someone sent me a clip. They said it's everywhere." Lena closed her eyes for a second. "Don't show Dad." "I won't," Mara said quickly. "Are the police handling it?" "Yes," Lena said. "Just stay with him." "I am," Mara whispered. "Please be careful." Lena ended the call and sat with her phone in her hand, staring at the dark screen like it might stop the world from moving if she stared long enough. When her connection finally boarded, it was late enough that the terminal looked washed out and tired. The crowd had thinned. The rain outside was still heavy, but the wind had eased. Lena walked down the jet bridge with her shoulders low and her face blank boarding pass in one handbag on her shoulder. A flight attendant glanced at her neck, then at her scrubs, then met her eyes with a look that asked a question without words. Lena gave a small nod that meant, "Yes, I am fine. Please let me pass." She took a window seat and pressed her forehead lightly to the cool glass. The plane smelled like recycled air and coffee. Her ribs throbbed with each vibration of the engine. The mark on her throat stung when she swallowed. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it until the cabin door closed. Then she looked. The same video appeared from 3 different people. One message from a nurse she barely knew at Harborview. One from a cousin in Tacoma. One from a former classmate from nursing school. A clip. Lena at gate A9. Dylan's hand on her lanyard. Dylan dropping to the floor. Lena kneeling with control calm, almost quiet. A caption across the bottom in blocky white text. SeaTac nurse takes down guy in suit. Lena's stomach turned. She watched 3 seconds, then locked the phone and set it face down on her lap like it was something that could burn. She did not sleep on the flight. She stared at the dark window and listened to the engine and kept her breathing shallow. When she landed in Portland for the connection, her phone had dozens of notifications. Most were messages. Some were calls. One was an email from an address she recognized only because she had seen it in tech vendor meetings at the hospital. Skybridge Analytics. The subject line was short. Immediate employment action. Lena did not open it. She did not want to read anything with Dylan's name in it. She only stared at the sender and felt a strange, distant pressure in her chest that was not relief and not satisfaction. It was the sensation of watching consequences move through a system that had been quiet until now. In a different part of the airport behind secured doors, Dylan sat on a bench under harsh lights. His suit jacket was folded beside him, now creased and dull. His phone had been returned for a supervised call, and he held it with both hands, thumbs flying. He left a voicemail, then another. He typed an email so fast his knuckles whitened. His screen lit up with an alert. Skybridge HR. He opened it and read. His face went still. Not angry at first. Not loud. Just still, like his body had finally reached the end of its usual tricks. He read it again slower. Then he looked up at the camera in the corner of the holding area, eyes wet with rage and disbelief, as if he expected the lens to argue with him. On Lena's phone, the notifications kept rolling in. She stood at her next gate in Portland scrubs, wrinkled throat-marked, ribs, aching bag on her shoulder. A man beside her whispered to his partner and glanced her way. A teenager's phone tilted toward her, then lowered. Lena looked at the departure board until the letters stopped swimming, forcing herself to stay in the present. Gate number, boarding time, seat assignment, Boise. Her phone buzzed again. She did not answer. She kept her eyes on the screen, waiting for the moment they would call her group, waiting for the simple act of walking onto a plane to feel ordinary again. The flight to Boise landed just after dawn, the kind of gray morning that made the whole city look muted, like someone had turned the volume down on color. Lena stepped off the plane with her bag cutting into her shoulder and a bruise blooming under her scrubs. The airport was smaller than Seattle, quieter, and it smelled faintly of cinnamon and floor wax. People moved with less urgency here. Nobody barked into a phone like the world depended on their calendar. Her sister was waiting near baggage claim, hair pulled back, eyes tired. Mara saw Lena's neck and flinched, then crossed the distance in 3 quick steps and wrapped her arms around her. "Don't," Lena murmured into her sister's shoulder. Not because she did not want the hug, but because her ribs protested. Mara loosened immediately. "Sorry, I forgot. Are you okay?" Lena nodded once. "Where is he?" "In a room. They moved him overnight." Mara's voice softened. He asked again at 5:30. He kept saying Lena's coming right. Lena swallowed. "Let's go." They drove to the hospital in a silence filled with small sounds. The turn signal, the windshield wipers, Mara's breathing that kept catching as if she was trying not to cry. Lena watched the streets, the familiar corners from childhood, and tried to let the airport fall away. Her phone buzzed twice in her pocket. She did not take it out. At the hospital, the hallway lights were gentle compared to an airport's glare. The air smelled like disinfectant and warm blankets. A nurse at the desk recognized Lena's scrubs and glanced at her throat, then looked away as if she understood without asking. Her father was awake, smaller than she remembered from a month ago. His skin looked thin, but his eyes were clear, and when he saw her, his face did that old thing it always did, a grin that tried to pretend nothing was wrong. "There she is," he said, voice rough. Lena walked to the bed and took his hand carefully. Her fingers found the pulse at his wrist without thinking. "Steady. I'm here," she said. He squeezed her hand with what strength he had. Your sister said you got delayed. Lena nodded. Weather. He nodded too, accepting it, because he was the kind of man who accepted what he could not change. Then his gaze shifted to the mark under her jaw, and the smile faded. That looks like it hurts, he said quietly. It's fine, Lena said. He stared at her a moment longer, and she felt the pressure of his attention, the way she felt pressure in the ICU, when a family member asked a question they already knew the answer to. Mara stepped in, placing a hand on the bed rail. Dad, she said gently, she's tired. Let her sit. Lena sat in the chair beside him and let the hospital quiet settle over her. Her ribs ached. Her neck stung. But she was here, and that mattered more than anything else. Later that afternoon, while her father slept, Lena stood in the hallway with her phone in her hand and finally looked at what she had been avoiding. The video had spread far beyond her world. Messages from nurses she had never met. A supervisor at Harborview asking if she needed time off. A reporter request with a polite subject line. A stranger calling her a hero. Another stranger calling her a threat. The attention came from every direction, messy and loud. She scrolled until she found the email from Skybridge Analytics again. It had been forwarded to her by someone she did not know with a single line above it. For your records. She opened it this time. It was not from Dylan. It was from a corporate communications address. Formal language. A statement that Dylan Mercer was no longer employed. A brief apology to the public. A commitment to values and safety. It read like something written by a team that had been awake all night. Lena stared at the words, then locked the phone. Mara came up behind her, voice soft. You don't have to answer anyone. I won't, Lena said. She meant it. She was not interested in interviews or applause or arguments in comment sections. She wanted her father to heal. She wanted to go back to her unit and do her job. She wanted to be invisible again. 2 weeks later, back in Seattle, Lena walked into Harborview ICU in clean scrubs and the familiar scent of alcohol wipes and coffee that had been left too long on a warmer. The night shift looked up when she entered. A couple of nurses gave her a careful smile. One of the residents nodded at her like she was a colleague, and also something else now. At the nurse's station, her charge nurse Paula slid a chart toward her and kept her voice low. You good to work? Lena met her eyes. Yes. Paula nodded once. If anyone bothers you, send them to me. Lena did not respond with gratitude or protest. She just picked up her assignment and went to check on her first patient, letting routine wrap around her like armor. That same day, Dylan's name appeared again, this time in a case update sent through the airport police liaison. There were charges filed for assault and battery and disorderly conduct in a secured facility. There was also an added charge tied to resisting when he tried to walk out. The language was clinical, stripped of drama, the way paperwork always was. 3 months passed. On a rainy Wednesday, Lena sat in a courthouse hallway wearing a plain sweater and jeans, hands folded in her lap, eyes on the floor tile pattern. Mara was beside her, visiting from Boise again, not because Lena asked, but because Mara insisted. Officer Holloway walked past, once nodded to them, then kept moving. Dylan arrived with an attorney and a face that looked drained of sleep. No suit this time, only a stiff button-down shirt that hung a little wrong at the shoulders. He glanced down the hall and saw Lena, and his eyes flashed with anger that had nowhere useful to go. The hearing was short. The evidence was too clean. Video from multiple angles. Statements from staff and passengers. The airline incident notes. The timeline that showed 8 minutes of tracking before contact. Dylan pleaded guilty as part of an agreement. Community service. Mandatory counseling focused on anger management. Probation. A restriction on air travel that would last years, subject to review. His attorney spoke about stress and misunderstandings. The judge's face did not change. Lena did not speak in court beyond confirming her name and acknowledging her statement. She did not look at Dylan when he talked. When it was over, she walked out into the wet air, pulled her jacket tight, and breathed until her ribs stopped feeling like they were bracing for impact. Outside, a woman with a microphone approached camera operator behind her. Lena Carter, The reporter called, "Can you tell us how you feel about the outcome?" Lena kept walking. Mara stepped between them, voice calm. "She's not speaking." The reporter tried again. "Do you consider yourself a symbol for healthcare workers?" Lena kept walking. The camera followed for a few seconds, then stopped when it became clear there would be no footage worth using. That night, Lena worked an overtime shift because a coworker's kid had a fever. In room 12, a patient's heart rhythm wavered alarms, chirping like nervous birds. Lena moved in hands steady, voice low, and the monitor numbers eased back toward normal. She charted. She checked lines. She adjusted medication. She did what she had always done. In the break room near midnight, someone had the video paused on a phone, not playing it, just staring at the still frame of Dylan on the floor. A new grad nurse looked up when Lena walked in. "I'm sorry," she said quickly. "I didn't mean to." Lena poured coffee and took a careful sip. "It's fine." The new grad shifted awkward. "People keep asking if it was scary." Lena set the cup down. "I was tired." The nurse nodded, not sure what to do with that answer. Lena turned back to her coffee and let the conversation die. Weeks later, the notifications slowed. The internet found new stories. People moved on the way people always did. The bruise on her ribs faded into yellow and then disappeared. The mark on her neck softened to a faint line. Her father continued physical therapy in Boise and sent her photos of his slow walks down the hallway with a walker and a stubborn grin. Life became normal again, not perfectly, not completely, but enough. One evening, after a long shift, Lena left the hospital and stepped into rain. Seattle rained steady and familiar. She pulled her hood up and walked to her car, shoulders, loose hands warm in her pockets, breathing even. Her phone buzzed with a message from Mara. "Dad says he loves you. He also says he owes you pancakes." Lena stared at it for a moment, then typed back, "Tell him I'm collecting interest." She got into the car, closed the door, and sat in the quiet, listening to the rain tap the roof. If you enjoyed this story, hit like and subscribe. And I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or country in the comments.